Okay, we're going to go into the business meeting for just a few moments here to give you some information about what we've done during the year. I'm going to start off basically by paying our respects to a couple of our members that have passed away. If you look in the booklet, actually last year we talked about Wilson and Basil. They both died before the meeting. This year, Wes Harleen and just recently Bruce Balkin passed away. I'm going to talk about the two of them just a little bit together because it's kind of interesting. Bruce was born in Salt Lake City in 1916. Wes was born in Salt Lake City in 1921. They both went to the University of Utah Medical School when it was a 2-year school and then transferred to other schools for their medical degrees. Wes went to the University of Philadelphia and Bruce went to the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, Missouri. After medical school, they both were inducted into the Army and served our country during World War II. They returned home. Bruce did a pediatric residency at the University of Minnesota. Wes did plastic surgery, general surgery and plastic surgery at the University of Utah and the Mayo Clinic. They both arrived back in Ogden in 1953 and have been the list for both of them for the things that they participated in is everything. They've served on every committee. They've been president of the medical staff for both hospitals. I mean, the list just goes on, and it's a half-page long for both of them. They were prominent members of our medical society and are part of the history of Ogden's health care. So I want to take just a moment of silence in memory of these two individuals. And with that, we'll move on to our business meeting. First item on the agenda, this is Harry's official last day as the president. And I know that's just, his world is going to change, go back to normal now from where it's been the last year. The people that run our structure is that on the board of directors we have 3 officers, president, secretary, treasurer. We have 3 trustees, one of whom is the historian, Val. History is so important to this organization, so important. And then someone gets selected by the nominating committee, which we're going to do in a few moments, to become the president-elect. The president-elect comes in, spends a year kind of helping the guy that's the president, then becomes the president. The president in our structure today, under our policy governance that we're structured, really just has to deal with the meeting. Doesn't have to worry about the endowment fund, doesn't have to worry about the business of the organization. That's done by the other board members pretty much, although they participate and help. But it's a very busy year, and actually most of the meetings are pretty well set almost a year ahead of time in terms of what the agenda are and what the speakers are. So Harry can make his own comments about how the year actually has been for him. But anyway, Harry, I'd like to have you come up and receive your gavel as the president of Ogden Surgical Medical Society for 2010. Oh, I'm sorry, we got to get out here, get our picture taken too. Turn that on. And feel free to make any comments you'd like.
I'm not going to make very many comments other than to say that I should have taken this gavel and hit myself on the head first before I agreed to take on this job. But so far, over the 2.5 days, this has seemed to go well. I hope you've enjoyed the meeting. We've tried to have a wide diversity of topics and speakers, and the turnout has been good, the questions have been good, and I very much appreciate your coming. There are two people that I really need to thank, and I want both of them to come up here. Teresa Puskedra and Beth Swearingen. They are the real heroines of this meeting. They saved my bacon. They got this meeting put together. They got all the speakers lined up. They helped get things put together, and without them, this meeting wouldn't have happened. So I want to thank them personally with a little token of my thanks, and please give them another round of applause. And with that, thank you, and I'll be seeing you around the community.
Next on our agenda, I just have a couple comments, and then we'll go on to a couple other items. I think it's important for everyone to realize we use what's called a policy governance structure, and under that, the board is attempting to serve you, the members. You, the members of the society, are the owners of the society. And so it's extremely important for us that you communicate with us every chance you get, whether it's here at the meeting or in the halls at the hospital, about things that we can do to make this experience better. The purpose of this organization is not really the conference. The conference is the means that we use to achieve community collegiality. And I think Ogden has that. It's a unique community to practice in because of our relationships with each other. And this is primarily to offer the opportunity for us to get together once a year, away from all the other things we are and do. Remember that we're healthcare providers. We have common goals, common interests, and the goal is to help us all work together by having this type of a format to get away and be what we are. So we need to hear from all of you on anything that we can do to make that experience better, to make this conference better. Just anything we can do for you. Over the next few years, with the board has purposely we're going to work on going to the younger physicians in the community to over the next few years take over the leadership role of this organization to assure its perpetuity on into the future. We've had 65 years of doing this. We want to have another 65 years of doing this because it's a great adventure and it's a great experience for the healthcare providers in this community. And everybody benefits from it. Everybody does. So the next item on the agenda is the Treasury report. So I asked Frank to give us some information on how we survived the last year.
Yeah, if you can just put the first one up that lists the funds. I don't have control of it here. So as Bob mentioned, and many of you know, we do have an endowment fund for the Ogden Surgical Society. Some have thought it had a lot more money, I think, than it really does. But this goes over the 20-year history of the fund, and beginning back in 1980. And so, Ken Knapp was running the organization then, and there's a lot of fundraising done by him personally during that time, and really a significant increase in the amount of the fund. You can see up into the 800,000, 900,000, and then by 1995 we hit $1 million in the fund. At the time, my understanding was that there were just yearly meetings with the bank folks regarding the management of the fund, but people got anxious. The late 90s were a wonderful time to make a lot of money in the market, and so they decided to put more money into stock, and so they did that late in the 1990s, and you can see we peaked about 1,400,000 in 2000, and then of course the market crashed, and we know how that went with everybody's retirement funds and so forth. So you can see we dropped down then at 2000 and 2001, dropped down to about $1 million in the account. Also during that time, I'll show you the expenses. The expenses were really pretty darn high for for our meeting and so forth. So that combination really hit us hard. Did recover then in 2000 and up to 2007, and then, as you know, on the roller coaster of this last decade, we lost a third. We lost about 33%. The management of the fund has been somewhat conservative. We've tried to be in the 60% equity, 40% bonds and money range, somewhere in there, to try to protect us from significant losses. But I think there were, as most of you know, the market itself lost 40% there in that period of time. So we've done well since then, bottomed out at 874,000, and then as of last month, we're at $1.1 million. So we're up 31% from our bottom. As I mentioned, we try to be somewhat conservative and need to do that because we're protecting our fund. About $350,000 of that fund is restricted money that was collected in the 90s. And that we have to be careful about the use of those. We also have a formula for using the fund, the monies from the fund. So we look at the overall average or rolling average, and then restrict the amount that we can take from the fund every year to pay for the meeting. So that has allowed us, and what we hope that there's at least 3% gain every year so that we don't lose to inflation. If we get up in the range of $3 million, we may not have to have dues and so forth. So at this point, we've really made a concerted effort to preserve the fund. If you can move on to the next one. The next chart is just an expense chart and goes over the overall expenses of the academy of the organization. Dating back to 1999, and you can see the typical amount this is the total year cost for running the organization, somewhere at $175,000 10 years ago. And over these last few years, we've really tried to be aggressive about maintaining and keeping the expenses under control. Somewhere around $30,000 to $40,000 of that $180,000 is speaker expense, travel expenses, and so forth. The facility is $40,000. The 3 days of meetings here are over $10,000 a day. It's amazing what that kind of stuff costs. $10,000 to $20,000 is in some kind of miscellaneous stuff, mailing and so forth. So total cost of the conference are around $100,000 to $110,000, and then the rest of that is staff salaries and so forth. Bob can talk about the luscious retreat we do to Driggs, Idaho every year with the board, but we have there's planning committee meetings and so forth, so there's extra expenses involved. In addition, we have an audit every year, and I did not appreciate the purpose of audits before this was done, but it really protects us as an organization. So the auditors tell us, this is how you handle money. So when a check comes into one person takes the check from the mailbox, another person deposits the money. Bob and I are the only two that can sign checks. And so there are a lot of checks and balances in the system, so we don't end up with a situation like what happened with Weber School Foundation or Davis Foundation. As best we can tell, we've got the systems in place that we cannot be subject to people pilfering our account. So the audit has really been helpful in that regard, and we do it every year. So the last charts I want to show just have to do where our income is coming from, and the slide now shows all the sponsors, and you'll see where the sponsors fit into this whole situation. So the dues category on the upper left shows that there were a lot of income from dues, and I think what happened there is that's somewhat of an aberration in '05, but also there were a lot of people just paying dues and not coming to the meeting. And you can see over these last few years we stabilized and are slightly increasing. So if you look at the number of folks registered for our meeting now, the numbers are going up slowly, and I think the people paying dues are coming to the meeting. I think that's the difference in the $75,000 versus the $54,000 for this year. We're probably up closer to $55,000. So the sponsors are a big deal, and you can see in '05 essentially no income from sponsorship. Bob really pushed things in '06 when he came on board, and the sponsors are all the folks that you see listed in the program and listed in the slides before we start, the individuals, the medical groups in town, and so forth. And you can see it's a big deal, $45,000 of income from sponsors. The exhibitors are primarily the pharmaceutical income. 10 years ago, there was none of that income. Now, as you can see, that's gradually increasing. That's been a real tough cookie these last couple of years. As you know, the pharmacy folks have cut back on their funding, been much more difficult to obtain money from them. A lot of work has been done. Teresa's done a lot of work contacting the pharmaceutical folks, and as you can see, we stabilized and are probably up a little bit from last year. And then in addition, Teresa has been writing for grants, which hasn't been done for at least 15 years in this organization. So you can see and recognize the names of the the Dumpke Foundation. The Rigby's, of course, has been very supportive of us, the D Foundation and the Browning Foundation. So that amounting to about $10,000. And then the annual fund was a letter that you received last November or so. Again, Teresa's idea saying, gosh, we're a nonprofit organization, we ought to be sending out an annual appeal. So if you add all of that monies up on this screen, it's about $140,000. So $175,000 of anticipated expenses will be dipping into the endowment, about $35,000. So our figure would allow us to dip into the fund about $50,000. So I think we're doing well. Lots of effort in that regard, and thank those of you who have supported us. And I think you can get an appreciation for where we're at it financially and economically. Any questions?
As Frank said, using the sponsors has saved us basically in the last few years. So it is extremely important that individually you go up to these people and thank them for the sponsorships that they've provided. Spend time visiting the booths. That's what those guys are here for, the exhibitors, and more people that stop by their booth and say hi to them, the happier they are. For the future, this year we brought in the Utah Kidney Foundation to do a half a day along with us. So one of the concepts in the future is to kind of work towards a concept of an educational fair, maybe add another day, that we would have other organizations run parallel, integrated, or simultaneous meetings, so that as a member of this society you actually had more choices of meetings to go to, but we could consolidate the efforts of the sponsors. So I think that's one of the things we're working for into the future. The easiest way for us to do better is for every one of the members to bring someone with them next year. If everyone could just if we could increase our membership, it helps our income tremendously. And between increased membership, sponsorships, and eventually increasing the endowment fund, that's a major project to undertake. but eventually we need to do that. Then our ends policy states that our goal is to provide to the people in this area an educational experience, a pleasant experience, and to do that at the lowest possible cost. I don't think you can find a meeting this size, this caliber, for the membership dues that you have now anywhere. I don't think it exists anyplace else. But we can even actually do better than what we're doing if everybody kind of puts a little effort into it. And that's the effort that the members can put in, is to bring more people. Once somebody comes to this meeting, they almost always come back. They keep coming because it's a great time. So next is Jim here? Starley? Okay. I think he talked the other day a little bit about the CME efforts that we've done. We're recertified. We've got to go through that again. I talked the other day also. Continuing medical education is going to change in the next few years. It's going to be more regulated. There are more effort has to go into it. Just to put on this meeting requires 12 months of organizational work. It's not something you put together in a couple of days. And maintaining that ability to certify for CME credits is a major undertaking. And yet the process is good. It's right. It's a way to improve and document how we improve the quality of care in our community. But again, your participation is really essential. So filling out your evaluation forms, answering the questions, participating in trying a CQI project in your office are all very important and essential things. Then so as I mentioned the other day, we're putting efforts into the McKay-D residency program. We're going to do a CQI project with each of the residents, and they'll get CME credits from that. And we're working with Health Insight on that project and on individual projects that any of you want to do. And if there's somebody who does one and is interested, we'd like to have you come back the next year and actually maybe do one of the presentations on how the process went and your experience, and so that we can kind of educate ourselves on the things that we're going to need to do anyway into the future in terms of continuing medical education. Next on the agenda is the nominating committee. So I'm going to ask Mark to come up and go over our proposed ballot and ask you to vote on it.
So there are 3 positions to be filled on the board of the Ogden Surgical Medical Society this year. So the way this works is there's a nominating committee on the board who selects names, and then we present those names to you for a vote. We also ask for any suggestions of other nominations. So the 3 positions, 2 are for election, 1 is for re-election. I'll just name the 3. The first one is Doug Anderson, ENT, for the position of trustee of the board. Is Doug here? Would you be able to stand, Doug? Thanks. Okay. The second is James Starley, OBGYN, for the re-election to the position of secretary of the board. And I don't believe Jim is here today. He couldn't make it. The third position is Dave Allen for president-elect or the president of 2012 conference. And Dave couldn't make it today either. So now with those 3 names, We'll ask if there's any, first of all, any other suggestions from the group as to other nominations. Okay. And then next we'll motion for a vote of these three names, basically with raise of the hand in favor of the three nominations. Okay. Thank you.
Wow, congratulations to those people. The secretary's job is secretary's job, but actually that person is the person who's the chair of the CME committee. And so that's their real secret job, kind of the Superman job behind the Clark Kent thing. And Jim's and Teresa and Beth have just done a great job. And the last thing I want to say, Teresa is our executive director now. I know most of you may or may not know how policy governance works, but the bottom line is she has responsibility for everything. We tell her what we want accomplished in the end. We give her some guidelines about what she can't do, like break the law and things like that. But she pretty much has free rein from that point on. And as you can see, and as I told you, this is not something that you can run out of your back room at your house anymore. That's how our world is. It just becomes more complicated, and keeping the society going has become more complicated, required greater skills and higher level of performance. And Teresa has done an outstanding job. So I want to just ask for her to stand and everybody to give her a good round of applause for what we really appreciate.